Ecological issues, they affect us all. And so, tonight on Second Nature, we'll be recycling some old nature footage. Greetings, prisoners of gravity. This is Commander Rick. For 4 years now, I've made my home in this cramped, claustrophobic, increasingly stuffy hellhole, all so I can bring you the best in speculative fiction and comic books and talk with award-winning authors, award-winning artists, and award-winning directors. Now some might ask, gee, Commander Rick, don't you deserve an award for all your work in science fiction or comics or TV or... Exactly, Nancy. But I say no. Awards are for others, not me. And so I thought, let's talk about awards and what they mean. Nancy, roll our opening credits that we worked so hard on and obviously no one cares about.
Rising anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe has voted English-only sign. 40,000 tons of armed with PCBs blew up the ozone layer today.
Standing by for solid rocket booster separation.
Chris, in addition to winning the 1990 Campbell Award for Best New Writer, you've also been nominated for the Hugo and the Nebula. How important are awards to a writer?
The Nebulas are important because they're recognition from your own peers that you have done good work, and unusual works will often be, more difficult works will be recognized often by the Nebulas because they are an achievement in writing that writers can say, my God, this is wonderful. You know, this is a very difficult thing to do. I can't believe you pulled it off. Where an average reader may not notice and shouldn't notice the craft involved. The Hugo is very important because it's a recognition from the readership. It's a way of the readership to say to the writer, you've done a good job. You know, thank you for all that you've done. I do think readers go and they look, especially for that Hugo Award, because it is given by other readers and they know that a book that has won a Hugo Award is going to be a good read. It's going to be something that they're going to like.
The Hugos, named after Hugo Gernsback, the founder, publisher, and editor of Amazing Stories, are science fiction's People's Choice Awards. The Nebulas are more like the Oscars, judged by your peers. But there are other awards. A small jury picks the Philip K. Dick Award for the Best SF Novel of the Year. The World Fantasy Awards are pretty self-explanatory. The Auroras are Canada's version of the Hugos. Nancy, what is the Australian version of the Hugo again? The Sheepdag or the... Ditmar, yeah, Ditmar. It always sounds like a miracle fabric, doesn't it? Ditmar. A few SF writers have won Edgar Awards, which are handed out by the Mystery Writers of America. Did I miss any, Nancy? Oh, right. Yeah, some of these are trophies. Some include prize money. And of course, science fiction has won its share of Oscars and Emmys, mostly for special effects. Thank you, Nancy. Anyway, I've been asking authors about the importance of winning awards. In the 60s and early 70s, you won a Hugo and 4 Nebulas. I mean, you just cleaned up. What kind of impact did all of those trophies have on your career?
Well, it gave me a certain kind of notice and people sort of beginning to look for the next Delaney. It was very nice and very, very warming sort of thing to happen. It was a little strange because on the one hand, I was very young when this happened. I think the first award, I was all of 24 when I got the first Nebula for Best Science Fiction Novel of the Year. And so there was a sense that I had suddenly, erupted full-blown into the science fiction world. But actually I had done my first novel and published it. I'd written it when I was 19 and it came out when I was 20. So I'd really had about 4 years. Over that 4 years, I'd written some 6 novels. So it didn't seem all that sudden to me. Although now on the saner side of 50, and I look back on it, it does begin to look a little bit more sudden after all.
awards help get you noticed. It's what you do with that notice that determines whether you're going to be a commercial success in the writing business. A long time ago, Charlton Heston once told me that we were talking about this sort of thing, and he said, becoming a really well-known actor, a big star, is to a great extent a matter of luck. But if you are not, every actor gets at least one lucky break. And if you're not ready to take advantage of it, then if you're not prepared to do that, then sayonara. And I think that's kind of here. It was a break. It got me noticed, and fortunately I did something with the notice.
Even the most prestigious of the awards, which is the Hugo for Best Novel of the Year, and I am very proud of being the first non-American to win that award, even that doesn't transform your career instantly. I mean, it's not like having a Hollywood sale or something at the top of the bestseller list for 6 weeks. What it does do, I think, is improve your long-term sales, because to be able to put Hugo Award winner on the cover of a book means that, faced with a choice between two equally interesting unknown works, the prospective purchaser will probably pick up the one by someone who's, as it were, proved his form.
Publishers publish books the way the Indians planted corn. They throw a whole bunch out there, and they don't much care which little one comes up. Now, when you get an award, that is the equivalent of having a little green shoot come up out of the ground. They say, we'll water that one. It's just a sign, a promising sign that you are somehow different from the other little kernels of corn. And that's what happened. I won the Edgar for Bimbos at the Death Sun, and that led to my getting contracts for other books and led to my first hardcover.
Were you surprised that you won for that book as opposed to any of your earlier mysteries?
Times were changing. I thought my first 3 were very good, and they're social satires in the sort of Jane Austen vein. And I thought they were really well done. And I mentioned this to someone who had been for years in the Mystery Writers of America, and she said, "It's a lovely book. It won't even be nominated." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Oh, my dear, the same man has chaired that committee for the past 10 years, and that's not the kind of book he likes." And she was quite right. But by the time Bimbos came along, there had been something of a palace revolution, and people who were new, and more women and more people from outside New York, began to demand to have places on committees. And so different kinds of books began to get considered.
When the Forever War won the Hugo, the Nebula, and the Ditmar, what effect did that have on your career?
Well, it made me, I guess there is this sort of premature success syndrome that a lot of writers go through. You start to believe what reviewers say about you, and that's not good. But I don't think it lasted too long with me. I realized that there were political aspects to all of those awards that had nothing to do with their literary value. For the Nebula, I was up against Samuel R. Delany's Dahlgren, which is a fantastic book. I was also against Joanna Russ's The Female Man, a good book which had a big political following and a big political resistance too. So I essentially won by default. A lot of the people who would have voted for Delany voted for Russ because it was a strongly feminist book. And a lot of people who didn't want to vote for either of them for political reasons voted for me because I had a book they'd read. And because, war books are interesting. I don't kid myself about it. It had no immediate effect on my writing, but then I was writing some pseudonymous spy novels at the time just to keep groceries coming in. But then I put a novel up for auction, and it went for the largest amount that any novel in science fiction had ever gotten. And that was probably because I got the awards.
What effect did that first Nebula Award have on your career?
Absolutely none. I went to a convention 2 weeks after I won it, expecting at least minor kinds of recognition, and nobody seemed to be aware that I had won it. It made no difference in the sale of my next book, even though Nebula winner gets to be put on the cover. And I would suspect that a lot of people don't even remember it. If you can win a Nebula for a novel, or a Hugo for a novel, that's even better. It can have a significant impact on sales. But the short fiction awards, at least in my case, had absolutely none.
Well, what was it about that story, do you think, that made it a winner?
I don't know. I was kind of surprised myself. I've written stories with more exotic settings. I've written stories with more SF tropisms in them, aliens and space travel and genetic mutation. And I've written stories that seem to me to reach stylistically to more ambitious heights. I guess I would have to say that the only thing about that story that made it memorable was that the character had a genuineness that perhaps my other fiction hasn't. And I find that if it is true, I find that kind of encouraging to think that there's still a place in science fiction for the exploration of characters who are in no way remarkable, which of course was the whole point. Sally Gourley is an unremarkable waitress. History has passed her by. And I think it's very encouraging that science fiction still has a place in a small way for the ordinary person.
One of the great spin-offs of the Nebulas, besides the gratification felt by the winners, is that each year the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America who hand out the awards also compile an anthology of the winners with an editor's choice of runners-up. Nancy Kress's story, Out of All Them Bright Stars, can be found in Nebula Awards 21. The current editor of the Nebula anthology is James Morrow. Jim is also a Nebula winner. His short story, Bible Stories for Adults, number 17, The Deluge, picked up the prize for 1988. But he's seen the flip side of that coin as well. His novel, Only Begotten Daughter, lost out to Ursula K. Le Guin's Tahanu, The Last Book of Earthsea, a couple of years ago. But at least he was nominated.
The Nebula came at a very crucial point in my own career, because I had recently lost it in the case of This Is the Way the World Ends versus Speaker for the Dead. So getting the Nebula was a crucial boost for me psychologically. And I suppose when it goes to a writer who's really well established already, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But in my case, it put me on the map, and I was invited to be like one of the earliest of the Pulp House collection contributors, and I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't won the Nebula.
How big a role do you think politics plays in the Nebula selection process?
That's a good question. It's darn political as far as I can tell. I don't think there's any solution to that problem. The Academy Awards are political. You know, I suspect if we knew the full truth that the Nobel Prize is political and the Pulitzer is probably political. But the whole problem with the Nebulas, it seems to me, is the availability of the stories and novels. Because the people who take an interest in the kind of serious literary science fiction that the Nebula presumably rewards, have enough trouble keeping up with what's in Asimov's. And so the assumption emerges that, well, that's where we're probably going to find the Nebula winners. And if not there, then FNSF. But beyond that, you might get an amazing story on the ballot, but it's not likely to win. The numbers are against it. They just don't have that many people reading amazing, and forget about some story that might be in the mainstream, but still worthy of the science fiction label.
The Nobel Prize and the Pulitzer. Boy, he really had to rub my nose in it, didn't he? Politics was behind the one and only instance of a Nebula Award being declined. Lisa Tuttle turned down the short story Nebula when The Bone Flute topped the ballot for 1981. Imagine, she won and didn't want the award. So that award is just gathering dust when it could be given to someone else deserving of recognition. Whoever. Why did you decline the Nebula Award for The Bone Flute? And has your protest had any effect?
My protest has had no effect whatsoever as far as I can tell. The reason I declined it was I objected to the way campaigning was done. And it didn't seem to me fair. I thought either all the voting membership should have copies of all the stories sent to them by SFWA, or no one should be allowed to get their editor or their publisher to mail out, circulate the membership, so that everyone basically had the same shot at the award, and it wasn't a matter of if you could get a hold of the particular magazine or book it was in. So because I sat down and wrote a letter objecting in the strongest possible terms to this, I thought, well, the only way I can really object, I can't just write this sort of mamby-pamby letter. I have to actually write to them and say, I object to this so much, I'm withdrawing my story from consideration. So I did this, and I mailed the letter off, and within a week of having mailed it, before the letter could even have arrived in wherever it was, Seattle or wherever I had to send it to, I was living in Devon at the time, I got a phone call from someone who I didn't know, who said, "You've won the Nebula Award, congratulations." And I said, who is this really? Because I thought it must be someone who knew I'd written this letter. "Oh, no, and we've just counted the votes, and we wanted to tell you." This was like, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks or 2 months before the actual banquet, so that I could decide to be there. Well, I'd also always thought that the rules were that nobody knew who won until it was announced. This apparently was not the case. Anyway, I said, "I'm sorry I can't win it because I've just withdrawn my story from consideration." And I then felt that I really must, although this was not a major issue to me then, and it certainly is an even less major issue to me now, I felt that having put, it's like you give your word and then you don't just say, "Oh, well, I've won, that's different. I'll have it after all." So I said, since I've withdrawn it, regardless of the fact that it was too late to withdraw it, I'm afraid I'll just have to decline the award.
Yeah, but doesn't the fact that you won sort of undercut your argument?
Oh, no, it isn't the point of whether that it's wasn't saying that it's too effective. people who can send their story out have a better chance. Although I think they have a better chance of being read. And I don't know why I won. I didn't even think it was, that story, here's a moral lesson for you, that story was rejected by at least 2 editors before I sold it. So what it was doing winning a Best of the Year, it seems to me rather peculiar.
Unfortunately, because Lisa declined, the Bone Flute isn't in the Nebula anthology. So the only place to find it is in Lisa's 1987 collection, A Spaceship Built of Stone. It's a great book, well worth tracking down. The first Nebula Awards were given out in 1966, and the choices for Best Novel are always interesting. As Chris mentioned off the top, sometimes the award goes for "I can't believe he pulled that off." A perfect example is the winner for 1973, Rendezvous with Rama. Astronauts enter a lifeless alien spaceship, poke around, and leave. Arthur C. Clarke weaves that simple plot into a spellbinding read. And often, the Nebula winner foreshadows a new trend in SF. Ursula Le Guin's 1969 winner, The Left Hand of Darkness, marked the beginning of a lot of feminist science fiction. Joe Haldeman's The Forever War was one of the first of many stories to deal with Vietnam. And William Gibson's 1984 winner, Neuromancer, galvanized the whole cyberpunk movement. As well as the Nebula, Neuromancer scooped the Hugo and the Philip K. Dick Award. That's the triple crown of science fiction. Were you surprised by the success of Neuromancer?
Well, I was surprised by the triple award win, which was just a very freaky and anomalous thing. And I did it, I thought I had a chance at winning the Philip K. Dick Award, which at that time was sort of aimed at weird SF and paperback original. Anyway, I didn't think I had much hope of the Nebula, but I was positive that it wasn't going to win the Hugo. And in fact, if the World SF Convention had been held in the United States, I don't think I would have won the Hugo. The Brits and the Australians have a very different taste, and since you have to be an attending member of the convention to vote for the Hugo, it kept a lot of American voters out of the pool.
Speaking of unlikely wins, a few years back at the World Fantasy Awards, a comic book took top honors for Best Short Story. Neil Gaiman and Charles Vess's extrapolation of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream beat out stories by Terry Bisson, Thomas Ligotti, and Elizabeth Massey. Author Harlan Ellison reports, "So infuriated were the faithful at such a choice being made, that the great gray eminences who run the fantasy con from behind their night shadow veil of secrecy have rewritten the rules so that, heaven forfend, no comic book will ever again be nominated. Just what speculative fiction needs. More rules. What effect have your various comic awards, the Harveys and the Eisners, plus the World Fantasy Award, had on you and on The Sandman?
As far as I can tell, they had no effect whatsoever on the sales of Sandman. They have no effect whatsoever on the recognition of Sandman. But they get me really, really, really terrified when it's time to start typing again, and I look up and I see these things and they say, "You're the best writer in comics." I don't need this, guys. I don't need this. Go away. All it does is make you feel there are all these people looking over your shoulder going, "Well, he was very good last year. I wonder how he's going to be this year."
How big a deal was it for you and Alan to win a special Hugo Award for Watchmen?
Well, from a personal point of view, I mean, to get a Hugo Award, it's kind of like stepping up from the lowest ghetto into the slightly better ghetto. I mean, in as much as I still perceive science fiction as being thought of as a bit of an aberration, you know, and comics are an aberration even worse than that. But I think for it to be treated as it were a proper book, a proper novel, albeit a proper science fiction novel, I think is a significant advance. Personally speaking, always having been a science fiction fan, knowing some of the things that have won Hugo Awards, I mean, it means a great deal to me.
The winningest author at the Hugos is Harlan Ellison. He won 3 in 1967 alone. He's also got a trophy case full of Nebulas, Edgars, Writers Guild of America awards. In fact, Harlan even garnered a Grammy nomination for his reading of his short story, Jefty is 5. Harlan's won just about every coveted prize, except Miss Congeniality. Harlan, you've won an absolute ton of awards.
Boy, does that piss people off. That a jerk like that, such as I, should win so many awards. Clearly, it's not for popularity. That's got to be the quality of the work. It makes them crazy.
Well, my favorite of your award winners is Jefty is 5. Does that story still work for you? Has it stood the test of time?
Has it stood the test of time? Yeah. As I read it, I go back and I reread my stuff every once in a while, and most of the time, I'm reading something by someone I said, gee, you know, what a stupid story, or gee, what a great story. It's as if someone else did it. I mean, automatic writing, one of those things. I go back and read Jefty, and I cry. I cry for that poor child, and I cry for myself, because it's my past, and it's everyone's past. And what that story says is, yeah, it's really good to listen to Lyle Lovett, and it's really good to listen to Michael Jackson if you like Michael Jackson, or to listen to the B-52s if you like the B-52s. But folks, Johann Sebastian Bach wrote music, Berlioz wrote music, Glenn Miller wrote music, and you must not destroy the past just to let the present, with its economic importunings, savage those wonderful things. You don't tear down a beautiful Art Deco building to build a bloody parking lot for cars. You don't do it. You don't destroy the atmosphere to give a few people jobs. That isn't sane. And that's what that story is about.
Jefty is 5 was your 5th Hugo Award-winning story. For someone who's won so many Hugos, you've been awfully critical of them.
Well, the Hugos are... You see, the wonderful part about this is all the things that we would say in private, guys like me are not allowed to say on a camera. I basically don't give a shit, and I'll say them. I think awards are bullshit. I think awards are detrimental to the writers. I think for the most part they are select, with the exception of the Writers Guild Awards, which are picked solely and totally on the basis of the material. They don't even know who wrote them. They're blind scripts. You don't know who wrote them. So when you win one, you have won something because of the basis of the work. You win a Hugo, you win a Nebula, you win a Horror Writers Award, you win an Edgar. I've won all of them in multiple, for God's sakes. What you're getting are popularity awards. If you were a good boy that year, if you were published in the right place, if the right people read it, if stories that were 5 times better than yours were published in places where no one saw, then you get an award. They are meaningless. They had value years ago. as being, you can put them on the cover of a paperback, Hugo Award winner.
Right.
Well, every book you pick up now is a Hugo Award winner or Hugo Award nominee or someone thought this should have won a Hugo. They don't mean squat. The minute you start thinking that because you won an award, you're a terrific writer, you're dead. The loss of innocence is the worst thing that happens to a writer. It happened to Scott Fitzgerald. It happens to many writers. They suddenly begin looking over their shoulder saying, ooh, I'm hot. I'm an important writer. I must now write something great. When you set out to write something great, you write not the great American novel. What you write is turkey droppings. So awards are nice. I win them now, when I win them, only to thumb my nose at those who say I'm too old to win them, or that I'm too mean to win them, or I don't deserve to win them. There's this wonderful scene in a movie called Unforgiven. Brilliant film. One of the best films I've ever seen, and may well be one of the best films of the year, maybe an Academy Award winner. Who knows what else is going to come out this year. But there is a scene in which Clint Eastwood, who is, for various reasons, is standing over Gene Hackman with a double-barreled shotgun in his hand. And Hackman looks up at him from the floor, and he's a lawman. Named Little Bill, and he says, "I don't deserve to die like this. I'm building a house." And Eastwood looks down at him and says, "Deserve don't mean shit," and blows his face off. It's one of the really great solipsistic lines of all time. I mean, it is pure Sartre. Deserve don't mean shit. You look at Dostoevsky, apart from being an epileptic, he borrowed money from his friends, never paid them back, deserted his wife and children, who was a gambler, who was an unregenerate slob. Great writer. Deserve don't mean shit. It doesn't, whether you deserve to win an award or not, has nothing to do with the quality of the work. And work that I have done has never won awards, and work that I think it's okay, like A Boy and His Dog. I like A Boy and His Dog. It's a nice story. I never would have given it an award. The fact that it's so damn famous, I think, is silly. There are stories that are much better than that. A story I wrote called Grail, I think, is better. The Man Who Rode Christopher Columbus Ashore. I've been working on that since 1978. This is 1992. It took me that long to be smart enough to know how to write that damn story. I think it's one of the best stories I ever wrote in my life. Who knows whether it'll win an award? We shall see.
Maybe I need to be more like Harlan. Awards are a heap of horse pucks. People who win awards are toadying greasy weasels. The fix is in. It's all a... What? Facts. Congratulations, Commander. What's this, Ed McMahon again? You have won the 1992 Aurora Award for Best Work in English Other. What? I'm the best other? Who picked up the award? Yvonne Penny. Thanks, Yvonne. Oh, here comes. Look, Nancy. Look, I won an award. Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So we won. This is so, it's so.
I think awards are bullshit. I think awards are bullshit. I think awards are bullshit.
I don't care. I won it. Sorry, we won it. We, me and Nance and my friends in control who helped keep me going. Thanks. Thanks to everyone who voted for us and watches us and supports us. You like me. You really like me. It's a 44 Magnum. Until next week, I'm Enrico Groove. Next week on Second Nature, atomic scientists discuss safety measures for the proposed nuclear super collider, including super airbags. Plus, crossbreeding sheep and snakes to produce yarn.